Welcome to the One DFS Breakdown with Jon B. It is 11/4/2021. Almost the end of the year already. It's crazy. It's Minnesota here. We're expecting snow probably the next couple weeks. Nothing today or anything. Yes, I'm wearing the same hoodie as always. I like this one. It's warm. The hat too. Let's talk DFS today, you guys. I love hanging out with you guys. Hit the like and subscribe buttons. I need subscribers. I need the likes. I mean, I don't need anything, but, it's cool if I find people that, are interested. Last night was a really good night. I mean, I didn't get richer. I didn't, or rich in the first place, I should say. But anytime you return a positive ROI, you're happy, and maybe 15% ROI. So nothing spectacular. I only had 9 lineups in the big tournament, and I cashed on 5 of them, so I can't complain about that. That's a pretty good ratio. I had 150 lineups in the piggy bank. I think I cashed on 100, give or take, of those. So can't complain there. Came out ahead, and anytime that happens, especially on an 11-game slate, which is freaking bananas, you have to be happy. You have to be happy. I'm happy with it. And you just move forward and you go on. Yesterday's winner, 436. Oh, he had Tyrese Halliburton, and that was Brian 212. I don't know that person or what they do, but they succeeded. They took the top 6 spots in the Fanduel big one yesterday, worth about 180 grand, and they won the piggy bank also. Which, of course, that's similar to what I try to do every day. But I don't. 436 is a great score. He had Halliburton, Lillard, Brunson, Gary Trent, Anthony Edwards, Bridges, Turner, Allen, and Capella. That's a pretty fabulous lineup there. Based, man, just seriously. My highest lineup was 372.5. Let's see. And that's in the piggy bank. I'll have to double check what I had in the other one. I had Luka, Bledsoe, Brunson, Korkmaz, Anunoby, Hayward, Miles Turner, Thad Young, and Jokic, which is pretty solid. Everybody performed well except for Bledsoe. I guess Korkmaz too, but Bledsoe 23.9, Korkmaz 22.5. Thad Young 29.7. That was something that, like, in my workbook yesterday, I talked about him. I said, you're going to have to get to some of him, and there ended up being 20%. I think everybody that played him on Twitter yesterday was saying, man, I was hoping for a 1 or 2%, like a sneaky play. But it seemed really obvious to me. There was guys complaining about, how do you know Thad Young, 20%? But it was just a no-brainer yesterday to get Thad Young, in my opinion. So 30 points basically from Thad Young is fabulous. 9.4% drafted in the piggy bank. The other one, he was 20%, I think. Actually, I'll just pull that up and take a look. Go back to my history here and see. We'll take a look. Actually, I'll let you look at it here. No reason not to. Let's see. Here's the clutch shot. See, he took the top 6 at 436. I mean, you must really like your lineup if you're putting a 6 of the same lineup in. I mean, good for him. Let's see. Here's my 5 out of 9. 349.3 was my highest in the big one. Let's see. Luka, Pat Bev, Anthony Edwards, Korkmaz, Miles Bridges, Chetty, who played minutes but didn't perform. 16. If he'd have had 30, it'd been much better. Miles Turner, which, that right in here, this is like, if you look at Pat Bev's ownership at 3.8, that was a no-brainer with him starting even against the Clips. They shot their lights out 80%, 85% in the third quarter. There was nothing you could do. We played hard defense on them. We played a good game. They just didn't miss. That's ridiculous. And that one blonde female ref, now her being female has nothing to do with it, but I'm just identifying which NBA ref I'm talking about, the blonde one. She's horrible. Horrible ref. Just should be not in the league. Shouldn't be reffing high school games. Hot take. Most NBA refs are bad, though. All of them are terrible. They're the worst refs in professional sports. It's not close. All of them should be really, really investigated. The idea that games go in streaks. I mean, some games do go in streaks, and players play off each other, and players play off of situations. But far too often, things that are supposed to happen because of the referees in the NBA. And I call it out all the time. I tweet at the NBA all the time about how they cheat. You know, it's pretty rough, and you can get into the grand conspiracy theory of it, and the politics of it, and whatever, and the old school David Stern mob ties and that kind of stuff. I'm not suicidal, by the way. Anyway, point being, referees have been caught cheating before. There was a book written about it by a former referee. The investigations are done in-house by the NBA, of course, which proves nothing. But there's a reason that games go the way they do. There's a reason that one team will shoot 30 or 40 free throws and the other team will shoot 5 in a game that's supposed to go a certain way. So it is what it is. And it sucks for a team like the Timberwolves, who have to play twice as hard and double their efforts in order to beat the referees also. I don't blame the referees for every loss. I mean, the Clippers just shot the lights out, period. They beat us hard. But the refs don't help. The refs don't help. They always call nonsense calls. I've seen former stars, Tayshaun Prince and those guys, come through here and go, man, it's hard to have that jersey on. Not because they don't like the team, but because they don't get any respect from the referees. So it's a tough situation in the NBA. All the refs should be fired, every single one of them. Their pay should be tripled, and then you should hire all new refs. And then you should automate as much of it as possible. If you look at what tennis is automating these days, they've just gotten rid of line callers and all that. I mean, why would you want to get it wrong? The AI exists. The AI exists to the extent where it could basically call everything. You could have every single line covered. You could have the hoop covered by AI from all directions. So, to me, I'm saying automate the whole darn thing. As much as you can. It's not like they don't have the money. Do it. Quit being a wuss. Take the human element out of the refereeing, because they're awful. They're awful. All right, that's my soapbox rant for today about NBA referees. Nobody sue me. It's just a personal opinion. You can think what you want. But that's okay. That's okay. I still love the NBA. I watch it. I participate. I pay money for products. I go way out of my way. I switched TV providers so that I could watch my Timberwolves this year. I talk about NBA all day, every day. I play NBA DFS. I own a website that has the letters NBA in the title. It's not up or anything, but, it is what it is. It's going to be a good one when they come calling. It's going to be a good one when they come calling. And they will. Anyway, wow, yeah. Luka Doncic, Beverly Edwards, Korkmaz, Bridges, Chetty, Miles Turner, Drew Eubanks, and Joel Embiid. It's pretty much my chalky lineup. I mean, to me, Pat Bev was going to be chalk. Other people didn't agree, apparently, but that ownership helped me out a lot. Miles Bridges at 8.7%. This guy is the future. I mean, this guy is a top 5 young player out of the young players. I mean, this guy is great. So 8% ownership is a slap in the face if you're Miles Bridges. Chetty was chalk. I guess not as chalky as I thought. The ownership projections were high on him, but I think he needed like 3 stocks and 7 more rebounds to matter. Miles Turner, I've been playing a lot of him, and he's been performing for me well. 11% ownership helped me there. I thought Embiid was going to have a monster game. I thought that was going to be, especially with how close it was. I know it was very defensive, but I thought he'd end up with more stocks and more rebounds. So I thought really that was going to be like 60. So I had more Embiid than anybody. But 41 is 41. You can't complain about 40 points. It just is what it is. If you get 40 from everybody, you have a good shot. So, all right, you guys, enough of my Fanduel and my NBA rants and nonsense. Is what it is. Let's go to Excel. I've got the first team already pulled up. Let's go look at the NBA odds. Philly at Detroit. That's right, I say Detroit. Philly, of course, second night of a back-to-back. Detroit, I think, second night of a back-to-back. I don't know. Philly favored, of course. I'm going to make myself a little larger here, because I know you like to look at this thing here. I don't know. Never mind. I'm done. I'm done. Anyway, I was dropping frame rates like crazy yesterday. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not right now, which is great. I reset my router. I reset my modem. Hopefully that's good enough. So yesterday's show is pretty choppy, and I apologize for that. I think they were working on the cable plant in town here, and that had something to do with it. So I don't really know. Hopefully today is better. If it's not, then we'll try to work through the kinks, and maybe I'll be looking at a new router or modem, or I'll check the outside wiring or something. Used to be a cable guy, so I kind of know, Philly at Detroit, 208.5 total, so super low. You're not gonna want to get crap tons of this game. Let's look at. I think I got Philly up. Okay, let's look at their injuries. Danny Green sideline day to day. Some tightness is hamstring. Not a strain. Likely to be cautious. First game back to back, so he might play. We'll see. He's not in the starting lineup currently. Toby's out. It says day to day. There's nothing here, but he's got COVID, so I think it'll be at least a week. Ben Simmons is mentally Ben Simmons, so you don't have to worry about that. Starting lineup: Maxey, Seth, Curry, Thibault, Korkmaz, and Embiid. So similar to what we've been seeing against Detroit. Let's look at Joel Embiid. He's a pay-up option that's under 10,000. That's a big deal for me. 9,600, 30.6 minutes a game, 42.4 fantasy points per game, 1.39 fantasy points per minute, 32% usage. Pricey guys are hard to hit value, especially on good teams where they may not get as many minutes because they're just winning all the time and they're not grinding it out as hard. You're going to have to get to some Embiid against Detroit. He could go bananas. Again, this could be similar to yesterday where it's like, okay, 103 to 98 or whatever, and it's close and it's low. But it could have huge blowout potential too where he doesn't play in the fourth quarter. But you're going to have to take a flyer on, 15% of Joel Embiid just to make sure. Because that's one of those guys, if he's playing, you got to play a percentage of him because if he goes for 85, you don't want to be on the outside looking in at that and going, oh man, I needed those 85 raw points. Is what it is. Simmons and Harris is out. Andre Drummond, 18 minutes, 1.48 fantasy points per minute. For a bench guy, 5,800 is too much money for 18 minutes. There's no question. I'm glad I really didn't get to any of him yesterday. He had 60.1 or 0.3 2 games ago, and then yesterday I think he had 12. Something ridiculous like that. He just doesn't get the minutes. So, it's certain matchups where I think it's going to be a pace-up spot, and maybe you'll get some extra minutes or something. You can look at Drummond. You can squeeze him in if you have to, but 5,800 isn't really squeezing in. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, that's almost $6,000, so kind of a mid-range price. If he was like 4,500, then that's maybe squeezing him in. So Drummond, unless you're confident he's going to get 22 or more minutes, you're going to have to fade. It is what it is. I say that a lot. It is what it is, but that's just the facts of the matter. There's just nothing you can do about it. Tyrese Maxey at 5,400, I don't mind because he gets almost 30. He gets 32 minutes, 25 fantasy points, 0.78 fantasy points per minute is not do it. It doesn't do it for me. There's literally nobody on this team averaging 5x value. In a low score like this, like I said, you're going to have to get a small percentage of Embiid just to get it. There isn't anybody else I'm going after, unless you think Shake Milton, who's been cleared to play. I don't know how many minutes he played yesterday, but if you think Shake Milton can get 22, 24, 20, mid-20 minutes or more, then his 0.98 fantasy points per minute might be worth looking at. Maxey lets me down all the time. Seth Curry lets me down all the time. Neither are huge producers at 0.78 per minute. But 0.98 from Milton. If he gets the minutes, keep your eye on it. Thibault also, this is a guy that can just pull up 9 stocks for no reason. He's a defensive guy, 21 fantasy points per game, but at 4,400, now you got a guy you can squeeze in at value. 0.86 fantasy points per minute can go up with a couple of stocks. 4.78x value. That's a guy you're going to have to get a little bit of today. Just a little. You don't have to go crazy. I wouldn't put him in my best lineups all the way down the line, but I get some of him. Similar to Korkmaz, when he gets minutes, he produces pretty well. $4,200 is cheap. 21.3, especially if he's in the starting lineup. He's been in some of my best lineups the last couple days. So 21 minutes, also 0.9 per minute. George Niang at 3,700. That's going to depend what kind of minutes he actually gets. 21 minutes, 18 on 0.86 per minute. But he almost hits 5x value. So if you want to sneak in some Niang and Korkmaz and Thibault, you can as value plays. The total on this is hard, so getting 2, 3, 4 guys out of this game is going to be a little bit tricky. So then again, I think they had the Timberwolves total yesterday like 215, and I think it ended up being like 250. Don't quote me on that, but 240 to 250 maybe. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes they don't get it. I would bet the over on this game if you have to, like the over. I would bet over 208.5 personally, but who knows? Yesterday, it wasn't over 2.5. It was 103.98. So Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I wouldn't bet the farm on it. I would bet, $25 on it or something. I don't know. I'm cheap though. So. Sorry. Okay, let's look at Detroit, you guys. We're getting off track here. I already talked my smack about the league and the referees and the stuff. So that is what it is. I will cease and desist, I promise. Anyway, Jeremy Grant. This is a team that's filled with young players who are, if you play them, they're going to be value plays for sure. Jeremy Grant, I like the kid. I mean, $7,100, 31 minutes a game, 32 fantasy points, over a fantasy point per minute. Doesn't quite get to value. Let's look at the. But before we get going, this is what I always skip. I'm like, I should really have a formula where I do this first, this second, this third, and I do, but I just always space it. I really need a Post-it note. I mean, you'd think in my office I would have a Post-it note, but I don't. But I'm gonna get one. That shows order of process of what I'm doing. Detroit, no injuries anyway, so we're wasting our time talking about it. Killian Hayes in the starting lineup. Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, Isaiah Stewart. Cade Cunningham kind of screwed me over the other night, so I'm kind of light on him for sure. He doesn't really have a shot yet. I do like Jeremy Grant, 7,100. We went over the numbers already. You could get to a little bit of him in this matchup. It's going to be a low-scoring affair, so maybe not much of him. I like Kelly Olynyk at 5,600, 27 fantasy points per game, 1.17 fantasy points per minute. He gets close to value at 4.8x as a baseline. I like Sadiq Bey, 0.93 per minute, 30 fantasy points per game, 5,600. That's not a bad price tag. He does hit value. The only one on the team, 5.3x value for Sadiq Bey. Stewart, I'm pretty much fading Stewart, not producing enough, doesn't get the minutes he needs. Cade Cunningham at 24.53 fantasy points per minute. That's atrocious, and until you see that get up to 0.8, 0.8.5, 0.9, he's just a fade. I mean, people like him because he's a first pick. Eventually he's going to go off, and he's going to quit being nervous, and maybe that's true, but I'm not going to be in line for it until I see it. Josh Jackson has a lot of ability, but doesn't get the minutes, 22.3. He's not in the starting lineup or anything. So there's nobody really down the line here that I'm interested in at all. Somebody should free Trey Lyles, give him 12 more minutes. That's just my opinion. I've always thought that at 3,800 you could get him as a value play, but 17 minutes, even though he's 1.05 per minute, almost hits value. But so that's all I got on that. Detroit, Philly, down the drain, 4 more games to go. Going to be a quick one today, I think. I mean, other than my just total complete yabbering, which I know you tuned in for. What's the next game, you guys? Utah, Atlanta. Ooh, that's interesting. I just tried to run that through my brain for a second. Utah, Atlanta. Like kind of opposite ends of the spectrum as far as what you get, huh? What team are we looking at? Let's look at Utah first. Even though I kind of want to look at Atlanta first. We're going to look at Utah first. Injury report for Utah. Donovan Mitchell, questionable for Thursday's game. Tweaked his right ankle during the second quarter of Tuesday's game, and while he was able to play through it, it seems there's a chance he could miss Thursday's game. So keep an eye on that late. I think we'll have news on that in time, but keep an eye, Q-tag on him. Starting lineup, Royce O'Neal's now listed as questionable. I don't know what happened there either. This is a team I watch none of and don't care much about. O'Neal must have tweaked his ankle on Tuesday, but if he's unable to play tomorrow, it'll be interesting to see who would get the spot start, particularly with Donovan Mitchell. Also questionable. If O'Neal can't give it a go, we'd anticipate more minutes for Pascal and Ingles, neither of who produces a dang thing right now. Okay, Hassan Whiteside, probable. So off the bench, I is what it is. Mia Oni, we know about. Rudy Gay, we know about. Utah, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell with the Q-tag, Bojan Bogdanovic, no Q-tag, Royce O'Neal, Q-tag, Rudy Gobert. So it's going to be interesting. I think I saw Mike Conley in the Optimal the other day. I was like, wow, I should get the little Conley. But I always fade him because he always gets me freaking 17 fantasy points every time I play him. I do like Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. Their prices are broken. $8,200 for Gobert, a guy that can get you 50 or 60 fantasy points. He's averaging 1.41 fantasy points per minute, 5.39x value. That's a broken price. You're going to have to get to some Gobert against Atlanta. There's no question about that. I'm going to get probably more Gobert than I should. And Mitchell, if he plays 1.22 fantasy points per minute right now, 4.9x value as a baseline, you can't totally complain about that. He's getting the minutes, 39.2 fantasy points per game at $8,000. So those two guys are both, in my opinion, pay up options for under 10,000, but way under 10,000. So I mean, can you get 40 fantasy points for less than 8,000? Sure, probably. But can you get the chance at 60 for less than 8,000? I don't know. I mean, because the ceiling is high there, in my opinion. They could both easily hit 50, especially against Atlanta, in my opinion. It's all, of course, this is all my opinion, but Clarkson's getting minutes. His production is down to 0.88 fantasy points per minute. So Mike Connolly, 0.9 fantasy points per minute, 4.98 X value. That's second on the team as far as value goes. You might want to get to some Connolly tonight against Atlanta. As long as he can stay out of foul trouble and keep his feet moving, then Mike Connolly might be a little bit of a play here. So get Rudy Gobert for sure. Keep an eye on Mitchell's status. If he's in, don't go too bananas, because if he really does have an ankle issue, maybe he won't produce it as high as he normally does. And then get Mike Connolly too. Don't feel bad about it one bit. Royce O'Neal plays a ton of minutes, but 0.63 it doesn't even matter if he's hurt or not. If he's not, look for whoever they have replace him, because that could affect a lot, really, if Royce doesn't play. So who's going to start at the power forward for Utah if he doesn't play? I have no idea. Let me look. It's not going to be Malik Fitz. Pascal. It probably will be Pascal, but he's not a producer, 0.59. Ingles could get more minutes, but not at that position. I mean, you can play Boyan then you're gonna at the 4, but you're gonna have to start looking then at who you're gonna play at the 3. Rudy's out, probably Ingles, I guess. So keep your eye on Utah, because those Q tags could change a lot. They could mean, if they end up both being probable and they end up playing, then that's gonna be fine. If they end up not out, or if one of them ends up out, it could change the entire dynamic of the game. So keep an eye on it. Let's look at Atlanta. Trey, another pay-up option for 8,600. Another pay-up option below 10,000. 1.19 fantasy points per minute, 4.78 X value. John Collins. Let's look at all right, let's look at the injury report. Again, always getting ahead of myself. Kills me. Herder out for rest, probable for Wednesday. That's yesterday. Did he play yesterday, you guys? They hit 7 of 9 shots, 2 3-pointers. Okay. So he had a big game, potentially, yesterday. I didn't pay attention to it because I didn't have any of him, because he's been so terrible. So hopefully his numbers come up, though. He's got the ability. He played lights out yesterday, or last year, but 0.68 fantasy points per game this year. Terrible value play. His value is horrible. So if he can produce, then let's look at him down the road. Starters for Atlanta: Trae Young, Bogdan, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins with the Q tag. He did play yesterday. At the last minute, they kind of put him in. I never put him back in my player pool, which he had a good game. I think it was almost 40 fantasy points, so it wasn't terrible. I just didn't get to any of him. I probably needed him to push further into the green, but it's okay. Trae Young, 8,600. We kind of covered that. John Collins, 6,900. I like that price tag. Gobert isn't the crazy, 220 is the total on this one. For sure, Atlanta are dogs on this one, but you can push into Gobert a little more than people think you can. I like to sort of be contrarian and play big guys against Gobert. I've had good luck with that, actually, believe it or not. Most people see Gobert and they go, oh, I'm not going to play the other guy. But maybe you should. So Capella, 6,400, 1.12 fantasy points per minute, getting close to value. Those are your 3 guys you're going to really look at. Young, Collins, Capella. Bogdan's been improving a little bit, not enough. Hunter has been terrible so far, 0.62 fantasy points per minute from a DFS perspective. Kevin Herter, if he gets more minutes, if he produces like he did last night, then maybe. So keep your eye on all of those things. But for me, I'm going to get some Young. I'm going to get less Collins. I'll get more Capella than Collins, I think, tonight. Interestingly, because I'm going to have a bunch of Gobert, too. So kind of going back and forth there. 220 total should be fine. You can get multiple players without having to worry too much about it. All right, let's look at the next game. Boston at Miami. That should be a slow barn boring. Not a barn burner, just a barn bore me out of my freaking mind. Watching teams like that in the East playing like tons of missed shots and slow pace. Like, just forget it, you know? It's like that. Those are the kind of games I do other things while it's on. I don't actually watch them. I just have them on. Boston, no injuries. Good for them. That's the first time in decades. Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Al Horford is showing a Q tag. It says questionable rest because I think it's the second night of a back-to-back. Robert Williams. Here's the thing. So that I've noticed, if Horford doesn't play, you've got to play Robert Williams. You got to get to Time Lord. I mean, even in a defensive situation like this, he's going to do fine. If Horford plays, I fade Robert Williams. He doesn't produce at the same level with Horford on the floor. He just does not. Horford is having a resurgence. Here's a guy who was at the deep end of the bench the last couple of teams he's been playing on. His numbers have been just horrible. But, he's a former All-Star, and he's playing at that kind of level right now for Boston. So Horford's a guy I've had no trouble rostering and no trouble getting good, solid production out of. So keep your eye on Horford. If they rest him, play Robert Williams, even against Miami. If they keep him in, do not play Robert Williams, but you can still get to Horford. Maybe not as much, because he's an old guy playing Miami. Tatum's a guy I like to skip around. I don't know why. I like Jaylen better. I think production-wise, they're pretty equal. Jason Tatum, at this case, another pay up under 10,000, 9,400, 38.1 minutes per game, 42.5 fantasy points per game, 1.12 per minute. Doesn't hit value. Not on average, at least. He does sometimes, obviously. Jaylen Brown, $1,000 cheaper for basically the same production, about half a minute less. 40.4 fantasy points, 1.08 per minute. Higher value play in Jaylen Brown. I play more Brown than Tatum usually. A lot more usually. Al Horford, 7,900. There's your value right there. If he does play 43.8 per minute, 1.45, 5.5x value, you got to get to him. You got to get to him. Schroeder's another sneaky play, 6,200, 31 minutes, basically 29 fantasy points per game, 0.94. I'd like to see that tick up, 4.7x value as a baseline. So you can get to some Schroeder too. Maybe not that much tonight. But keep your eye on Robert Williams also. So Robert Williams is a play if Horford is out. To me, he's less of a play with Horford in. So it is what it is. His fantasy numbers, although still averaging 31.3 per game, and I think that's from early in the season with the first couple of games where he had big numbers, and those are just kind of coming back down to earth now. But so far, 5.14x value. That's where it's a little deceiving. You're like 7-8 games in. His numbers look great, but then like the last 5 in a row have been less than stellar. So that is what it is. So. Josh Richardson's a guy who's not the guy he used to be. He doesn't get minutes. He doesn't really produce. Grant Williams doesn't get minutes, doesn't really produce. Jabari Parker, yeah, right, going down the list, there's just nobody else to talk about. Nobody whatsoever. So, to recap, people like Marcus Smart, he gets tons of minutes, 0.72 is uninspiring. He has the ability to go crazy. He just doesn't very much. Not enough to warrant playing him all the time. So, get a little Tatum, get more Brown. If Horford's playing, get some Horford. You can get a minute amount of Schroeder. Play Robert Williams only if Horford's not playing. That's my opinion there. At least that's what I'll do. Let's look at Miami. Miami might be a pretty decent play. What's the total on this thing? 214.5. That's not inspiring either. Probably pretty accurate when you think about it. Jimmy Butler over 10,000 now. 34 minutes, 49.3 fantasy points per game, 1.45 fantasy points per minute is fabulous. His value is not quite there, but that's price related. Like I said, there's other pay-up guys, a ton of pay-up guys we've seen, almost all of them under 10,000 right now with high ceilings. I think that Jimmy Bucket's average right now at 49 is kind of also his ceiling. Within a few points. So it's tough. It's tough because Boston can play defense against a guy like Butler. So I probably will get to just a small percentage just in case, but for the most part, Butler's not a guy I'm going to be looking crazy at. Let me look at the Miami injuries right now because I don't know what they're doing over there. Just Oladipo still. Another guy that doesn't like basketball. Bam Adebayo, 8,800. That's a pay-up option, in my opinion, for under 10,000, under 9,000. So to me, you want to get a bunch of him. 31 minutes, 41 fantasy points, 1.3 per minute. Similar value to Butler, but at much less cost, $1,500 cheaper. So, in my opinion, I'm going to Adebayo before Butler here. Tyler Hero's a guy I've played almost every slate that he's been in. I've gotten to 6,400 is a good price tag for him, 34 fantasy points per game, and he can definitely outdo that, 1.08 fantasy points per minute, 5.3x value. That's the only guy on the team averaging 5x value or better. And so if you're a guy who builds a lineup trying to get 6x or 7x value out of your whole lineup, Tyler Hero is a good place to start. So, Kyle Lowry, another guy that I played. I had a bunch of Kyle Lowry last night. And that's helped me. Let's look at the starting lineup real quick. Lowry, Robinson, Butler, Tucker, Adebayo. So a bunch of good defensive players. I'm not high on Robinson. I never have been. But that's just me. You know, it is what it is. But Kyle Lowry at 5,900. You know, he's got such a high ceiling. I mean, he played well last night. I can't remember exactly what he had. I guess I could look it up. But it was into the 40s in fantasy points, I believe. Let me double check. Because I know I had him in some of these lineups. Oh, Jalen Brunson went off last night too, which I loved. I wish I'd had more Jalen Brunson. Let's just say that. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't have any Lowry in this one. Either way, I suppose I could look at the leaders. All right, it doesn't really matter. Either way, I think Lowry paid off last night, and so that's a sign if you like Lowry. On the second night of a back-to-back in a defensive matchup, I'm not totally certain. Here we go. I'm not totally certain that he's a fabulous play, but I'm definitely going to get to some Lowry. His usage is super low, and it doesn't make sense for a guy who's a point guard / shooting guard. But it is what it is. Robinson gets minutes but doesn't produce. Tucker, Tucker's 0.53 per minute, just fade all the way down. Just is what it is. Minutes, as far as basketball, fine. As far as DFS, no chance. So get to don't play much Butler. Get to some Adebayo and Hero. Get to some Kyle Lowry. Just because of the ceiling for the price for 5,900. It's a broken price. I mean, he could just very easily be 8,000 in my opinion. So got to play it while it's cheap because he won't always be that cheap. Let's look at Houston Phoenix. Total line on that one, 218.5, so that's not terrible either. That is not terrible either. Okay. Fade, I'm like, what am I doing? I gotta add Boston back in before it'll let me look at Houston and Phoenix. Boston, okay. Team, look at Houston first. Let's look at their injuries. Daniel Tice listed as questionable. Let's see why. Toe, questionable. That's basically all it says. It talks about Sengun more than it does him there. Just silly. Kevin Porter listed as probable. Didn't have a great game. Missed a potential winning shot at the end, but still put up some decent numbers if you ignore your turnovers and poor shooting. He's due for a big game in the near future, so just hang in there, it says. Porter's a guy I'd like to get a little of just because he's got the raw talent. I mean, I don't think he's a superstar yet. He's going to be kind of a solid role player and maybe a starter on a bad team, but I liked what I saw more out of him last year than I do so far this year, but it's early. That could all change. It could be just a confidence issue. We'll see. Houston's also Daniel House, as we know. Houston's starting lineup, Porter, Jalen Green, Jashawn Tate, Christian Wood, Daniel Tice with the Q tag. If he doesn't play, Sengun probably will. Sengun didn't really perform the other day, but he probably will the second time. You hope, maybe it's too much pressure for him. I don't know, but it's a guy I kind of like. Let's look at Christian Wood. I mean, he's kind of a night in, night out producer. If Ayton is out for Phoenix, then you're going to want to get to a bunch of Christian Wood at 7,900 because here's a pay up option that's 7,900, 1.19 fantasy points per minute, 5x value or better. Looks great on paper. I like it. If Ayton's out, I'm playing a ton of Christian Wood. I just am. Kevin Porter, so there's kind of an argument. You're right. There's kind of an argument to be made that with Ayton out, Phoenix actually speeds up, which could be bad for Christian Wood. There could be blowout potential and so forth. I get it. I get that argument. I do. But I'm still going to play a bunch of Christian Wood if Ayton is out. There's just no question. Everybody else down the line, if you look at their production for fantasy points per minute, it's tough. 0.86 for Porter, 0.78 for Jalen Green, 0.88 for Jashawn Tate. That being said, I like all three of those guys. They play hard. They have some okay value. Nothing great. But their salaries at 5,200, 5,800, and 5,900. You've got to squeeze some players like that in. Guys with high ceilings that can get you 40 or 50 fantasy points on a good night, or a guy like Jashawn Tate who can get you 35 or 38 fantasy points on a good night. You only need 28 out of him to get value. I mean, if you think about it that way, 28, 31, and 32 to get value out of those three guys starting bottom up. And Porter's got a ceiling somewhere in the 50s. Jalen Green has a ceiling somewhere in the 40s, So you got to think about that at those prices. Jashawn Tate, less, although I'll get a tiny bit of him probably in this matchup. Not a ton. Those guys are going to be just sort of low percentage value plays when you absolutely have nobody else to play in your have to fit them in kind of players. If Sengun starts, 1.1 fantasy points per minute so far. You're going to have to take another flyer on him if he starts and gets 25, 26 minutes. He's not always going to suck, right? And that is what it is. So you're going to have to play some of him because he'll be chalky if he starts. So you could be contrarian, I guess, but you don't want to miss it if he does go off. Eric Gordon hasn't produced enough, 0.8. I mean, 5x value, but that's just because he's 4,200. So if you need 21 fantasy points from a guy at 4,200, Eric Gordon could be your guy. And we know he's got a ceiling, but on better teams generally when he's going to be open. He's not a make-his-own-shot kind of guy. He's a stand at the three-point line and hope that somebody else is being double-teamed. In his case, it's hard because he's the one being double-teamed. Or Christian Wood, potentially. But realistically, nobody else on the team. Daniel Tice has not produced like he did in Boston. KJ Martin. Nwaba's a guy I'd like to see on a different team, getting tons of minutes. Everybody else on the team for me is a no-go. Everybody knows about the John Wall situation. Something has to be done there. That dude doesn't have a lot of time left, and spending a year on the bench. If I'm him, I'm on the phone 20 hours a day trying to figure out what the heck is going on with him. And I know that might be unrealistic. I don't know, but you're gonna have to do what you got to do, right? Let's look at Phoenix, you guys. We're kind of going pretty good here. I think we're almost done, actually. It's crazy. All right. And we're going to add Phoenix back in. Get rid of Houston. Move this over. Ayton with the Q tag is interesting because they might play a lot faster without him. In which case that'll affect Houston. So keep an eye on that. Devin Booker, 8,200. He's not the 70-point-a-game guy he used to be, but he still has a pretty high ceiling. So you might want to get to some of him. 1.1 fantasy points per minute. I like Chris Paul better. You get more out of him, 7,800. So if you have to pick and choose, I'm taking Chris Paul, 7,800, 31 minutes a game. So less minutes, one less minute, 40.2 fantasy points. So that's 4 full fantasy points plus, more than Booker, 1.27 per minute, 5.1x value. You got to look at that and go, okay. Got to get to some Chris Paul. The chance he's going to be the optimal is probably high. With those numbers at 7,800. Ayton is questionable if he's out again. Then it's obvious you're going to have to go to Kaminsky. But 7,800, basically 30 minutes, 34 fantasy points. I mean, he's a positive guy, 1.15 fantasy point per minute, 4.4x value, similar to Booker's value. Actually, it's exactly what Booker's value is. Michael or Mikal Bridges, 5,200. I love that price, but you need a little more points out of him. He only needs 28 3/4 to matter, but he only averages 25.8. So that stuff gets close to value, 4.97x value. In a matchup like this against Houston, I mean, maybe you're going to get to a bunch of Mikal Bridges. Maybe you're going to get to a bunch of Jay Crowder at 4,600. He put up 40-some fantasy points the other night. And his averaging is low, 0.75 per minute, but almost hits value, 4.89x value. So against Houston, you're gonna look at some of these guys. If Frank Kaminsky starts, you're gonna have to get to him. He had a big night the other night. He's not gonna get 19 minutes. He'll get 29 minutes, 28 minutes, 1.21 fantasy points per minute. He's the only other guy besides Paul hitting value on the team at 5.2x value. I don't like McGee. I don't think he's going to play the minutes. Even if he starts, I don't think he's going to get the minutes Kaminsky gets. Don't quote me. I don't know. I'm not the coach. There's other guys on this team I like Alfred Payton and Cam Johnson and Cam Payne. But they just don't get the minutes. And when they do their, Payton and Cam Payne do okay per minute. Cam Johnson, 0.67. It's nothing to talk about. Landry Shamet is a lost cause on this team, 0.46. So you got to hope for more out of those guys. Against Houston, there's potential for blowout. So some of those guys may be good blowout plays, like to be contrarians. They have to get 8 or 10% of some of those guys just to be safe. That they if they play 12 extra minutes, all of a sudden they're playing 28 minutes instead of 16. Then that's something to think about. All right, we've covered Houston and Phoenix, you guys. There's not much else to talk about on that. The total there was 218.5, so nothing crazy, but nothing bad either. OKC at Lakers again. I think they just play. 215 is the total on this one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I like that total. Yeah, Houston back in. This could be like a Minnesota Clippers thing where they had it projected at 215 and then it was like 250. So it depends on how strong OKC comes out, how long they can last. Let's start with them. The Lakers are a hard team for me. I have a hard time playing Laker players. Not that I don't like those players. I mean, LeBron is who he is. Anthony Davis is who he is. But it's tough because you never know what's really happening over there. Who's going to sit and who's going to start. I mean, you get a pretty good idea. But let's look at injuries. I never even looked at, Phoenix's injuries. Ayton, Cam Payne, Saric. So Cam Payne's out. So I was talking about him a little. It seems there's a chance he could skip Thursday's matchup against the 1-6 Rockets. Okay, well, we'll see if Ayton plays or not. For me, I'm sitting Ayton if I'm the coach, but that's just me. Chris Paul, Booker, Mikal Bridges, Crowder, Ayton on that side. Okay. OKC's injuries look like just Lou Dort's questionable for Thursday. Let's see what's going on with Lou. Missed Monday's game with the same issue. It is a right shoulder injury, which works in favor of guys like Giddey and Baisley. Right now, the starting lineup is listed as Giddey, Shea, Lou Dortz is there with a Q tag, Darius Baisley, Derek Favors. I've never considered Shea to be the pay-up option that other people have. He's got the potential 3 or 4 nights a year to hit 50 or 60 fantasy points. Because I don't think he's going to give you that with any kind of regularity. 34 minutes a game, 35 fantasy points a game. I think that's kind of right in the meat of what he does. 1 fantasy point per minute, 28.3, which is great if he's like a role player. But being the star of the team, I mean, you got to produce higher. You've got to hit your value. You've got to get, he should be 42, 44 fantasy points per minute or point per game for sure. I usually fade Shea. You can get to a little bit. I against the Lakers, I'm not sure what he did the other day, but get a little and then move on. Josh Giddey, 6,000, young guy, love the guy. 1.08 fantasy points per minute is better than Shea right now. He has a better value at 5.2x value, $1,600 cheaper for about the same production per game, give or take. So you're going to need to get to some Josh Giddey. Darius Baisley's 5,600. That price is low. 27 fantasy or minutes, 24.5 fantasy points. 0.91 per minute is not quite inspiring. Lou Dortz, I played a little early, but 0.69 fantasy points is not worth even looking at. Kenrich Williams doesn't get minutes. Nobody else really gets minutes. It's tough going down the list. I mean, what are we talking about? 17.6 minutes for Jeremiah Robinson Earl. 0.64 fantasy points per minute. There's just not many players you can play on this one. There's players I like. I like Trey Mann a lot. I think that he's a guy who, on a different team with a different situation with way more minutes, could have a lot of potential. If there was any inkling that somehow he was going to get 20, 25 minutes, you could look at him. But for me, there's not any inkling of that at this time. Teo Maledon, 0.42. I mean, it's just sad to watch. Sad to see those numbers. I played Mike Muscala one night because he was 1.01 fantasy points per minute guy. 4.5x value at $3,800. He just doesn't get any minutes. So you'd have to have some inkling that he was going to get 25, 28, 30 minutes. And that night he started, and then I think he put up like 13 fantasy points. It was painful to watch. It killed my whole night. Favors, again, he's a starter. 3,900 is great, but why isn't he getting starter minutes? 16.8, 0.85. I mean, doesn't come close to value. So unless he's getting 30, 35 minutes a game, 28 to 35 minutes a game, let's say. There's no point in playing Derek Favors. So play a little Shea, play more Gideon Baisley than that, and then be done with Oklahoma. All right, last but not least, guys. Let's look at the Lake Show. We know what we get from the Lakers. The two pay-up options here are over 10,000. The hard part there is that you got to have a little bit of each of them because these are both guys that can go for 60 or 70 fantasy points. And again, as always with pay-up options, you don't want to be on the outside looking in. I think Russ is the exception here, but Anthony Davis, 10,500. Let's look at the injury report on them real quick before I get too crazy into it. LeBron is on the injury report every day. List says probable today, so that's a good sign. Dwight Howard, questionable day-to-day. You're not going to play him anyway. Kendrick Nunn, you're not going to play. Wayne Ellington, THT, Trevor Ariza. None of these guys are going to play, so you have nothing to worry about. LeBron's probable, so you're going to have to go play some LeBron. Anthony Davis also listed as probable. So those guys are probable. You'll have to get to some of both of them. Right now, the starting lineup is listed as Westbrook, Bazemore, LeBron, Anthony Davis, and DeAndre Jordan. They're going to have to do something other than Kent Bazemore at some point because he's worthless. Totally worthless. I don't care what they say about his defense. He's not producing. DeAndre Jordan's getting let's see, how many minutes a game? How many minutes per game for DeAndre Jordan? 14 as a starter. Sure, great. 1.24 fantasy points per minute, but 14 minutes. Get him out of here. Retire. It's time to go, DeAndre. Time to go. Not worth anything in the NBA at your age and at your skill set or lack thereof. Sorry, bud. Okay. Anthony Davis, 10,500. He's averaging about 50 fantasy points per game on 35 minutes, 1.4 fantasy points per minute, 4.7x value. The ceiling here is so high. 60 or 70 for sure. You need to get 48 out of him, and he averages more than that as far as fantasy points go to make it worth it. He gets almost a 30% usage. So you're gonna have to get to Anthony Davis. You're just gonna have to get to him. The likelihood of being in the optimal is high against OKC. LeBron, same thing, 10,100, 37 minutes a game, 47 fantasy points, 1.28 fantasy point per minute. Another guy gets almost 30% usage. I don't like to pay over 10,000 for players, but these are the guys that you have to. Anthony Davis, LeBron, Jokic, Kat, Embiid, Luka, Trae Young if he gets there, but he's been under 10 the whole time so far. I like Russell Westbrook at 9,200, 35.9 minutes a game, 42 fantasy points per game, 1.19 fantasy points per minute. So out of the three of them, I'm going to have more Westbrook than anybody. I like Carmelo Anthony's playing 27 minutes. That's great for him at his age, 0.94 guy. So, at 6,000, I wish he was more like 5,000. I'd play way more of him. Kent Bazemore's 0.61 per minute is gross. Malik Monk's 0.61 is gross. Avery Bradley's 0.46 is gross. DeAndre Jordan's 1.24 is great, except for his 14 minutes are gross. There's so many gross things on this team. It's uninspiring. It's hard for me to root for them. During the Kobe years, I rooted for the Lakers every year that they weren't playing the Timberwolves in the playoffs, in the early years there, in the Shaq and Kobe days. Those are the days I really didn't root for them. Once Shaq was gone, Kobe is who he was, and it didn't take me long to realize who he was, the next guy. One of the greatest ever. There's arguments to be made on all sides. I'm not making that argument. I'm just saying one of the greatest ever. We all love Kobe. We all know what Kobe could do. Kobe could do things. We know. Kobe could do things we don't see today. There's guys in the league, young guys that try. There's young guys that have the potential. They just got to put the work in. Anthony Edwards is one of those guys. Luka, although he's more of a LeBron-type player. There's players out there that have the ability. So that's something to think about. So get to some Anthony Davis, get to some LeBron, get to more Westbrook, get to a little Carmelo Anthony if you need to, and then be done. That's it for the Lakers. So, all right, you guys. 5 up, 5 down. Nothing crazy. I think we covered everybody. I think we know what we're looking at. Went pretty smooth, I think. It went pretty smooth. I'm pretty happy. I hope you guys are pretty happy. It doesn't look like I really dropped any frame rates past the first 2 seconds of the the stream, which it said right at the very beginning I had dropped 55 frames at the very beginning, and then nothing since then, so 0.1% of the frames. So I can't really complain about that. So I hope that's okay. Listen, guys, it's Thursday. I got a lot to do over the next few days. Some travel, some other things happening. I hope you guys have a really good night. I hope you play well. I hope you win a bunch of money. I hope you let me know if you did or if my advice helped you or hurt you. Let me know. I'm not trying. You don't have to take it. And it's just my opinion, so keep that in mind. It could be worthless. It does okay for me. I mean, I'm not rich yet. I don't expect to be. I'm totally fine with that, too. Life is good. Life is good, you guys. If you have your faith and your family and your friends, keep chugging. Keep chugging. Grind. Do what you need to do. Play DFS. Do your research. Don't guess. I mean, you can guess if you need to, if you're in a hurry, because it's fun. It's fun to watch a lineup, even if you suck. When I started in 2013, it was like, there was a lot of guessing. I had a good base knowledge of basketball, and so that helped. And back then, a good base knowledge of basketball, having watched your whole life, that would get you places back then. It gets you nowhere now, because it's not about what you know about basketball now. It's really about what the data says about basketball. It's really what the data says about matchups. It's really what your deduction, the things that you deduce using that data, and how you use it. It's about percentages. It's about knowing that no matter how many lineups you play, whether it's 9, which I had in one tournament yesterday and did well, or 150, which I had in another tournament and did well, that it doesn't really matter. It's about percentages. And so if you get 60% of your lineups, regardless of how many lineups, into the money, you're going to feel pretty good about that. You're going to get your money back and then a little bit extra. Unless you push into the top 1% of 1%, which I get to sometimes, but not often. And then you're talking about, hey, that's my pay for the week. Hey, that's my pay for the 2 weeks. Hey, that's my pay for the month. Or better, maybe better. So either way, I do this anyway. You know, I don't care if I'm talking to nobody right now. I'm having fun. I love it. I'd love to be talking to somebody. A lot of somebodies. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell if you care. Our times are all over the place. I really can't stress enough that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be a little bit more scheduled. We'll have logos and banners and be a little bit better production-wise as far as value goes, although I don't really care about that. I mean, this is what matters. Connection. You can see my face. You can see the world I live in. This is just my office at home. You can see my drum set back here and my big fan and my printer and my Slave One. Original from the 80s, by the way. It's missing parts. So if you have parts for that, let me know. But it's about this. It's just about like connecting with other people that do what I do, that like what I like, that have opinions, you know, that I'm interested in. Even if I'm not interested, I'm interested. So let me have it. Other than that, you guys, I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time doing this. I look forward to it every single day. And I hope you guys win some money. I hope I win some money. I hope all of us win some money. Keep it up. Keep it up, you guys. That's it for me. I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know what the slate looks like. I have not looked at it. There'll be a plumber over tomorrow for most of the day, so getting some stuff upgraded. So I'll get a show on. I just don't know quite what time yet. So, but then I don't broadcast on the weekend. So tomorrow will be the last one for the week. And see, I'm yabbering. I'm just going and going. I'm keeping to go. Here I go. Just continually yabbering. So, all right, for real, I'm leaving you guys now. Have a good night. Peace out. Love you.